Gory.
Whatever.
Gory. You have to say gory.
Is it?
Gory damn.
I can't remember which one's
Not
like.
bloody. Gory.
I can't remember which one's the polite one.
Good man.
All right, sorry.
Welcome to Books You Never Read. Welcome to Books You Never Read.
Except for those we have.
I'm Nicole.
I'm Jason.
I was suddenly wondering, like, is everything plugged in? Anyways, today we are talking about parts 1 and part 2.
Yep.
Of Red Rising.
Yep.
Couldn't remember the name of it. If this is your first time with us, hope you've read the book up to this point. If not, pause, back out, read the book, get caught up, and then catch up with us. Participate in the live chat or participate in the discussion comment section below.
Mm-hmm.
We love chatting about the book. That's why we're here. We're on YouTube Music as a podcast, and we've been gone for 2 weeks, and it feels like it's been 5 months.
Yeah, we've like totally forgotten how to do this.
Yep. It feels very close to my head.
It's probably normal.
Okay.
It just feels small. I don't come in here anymore, except for this.
So anyways, I see y'all using the lingo from the book. What are y'all thinking about the book so far? Oh, okay, so Peggy has already made the comment. If you haven't read to this point, you surely read other books that made this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was going to say, my biggest comment so far, I like dystopian books.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're interesting and they can make really interesting points. But sometimes I read a dystopian novel that I keep getting pulled out of the novel thinking, oh, that was in 1984.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was in Fahrenheit 451. Oh, that's from Anthem.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing that in this book.
I mean, there's only so many things I guess you could do.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's not a criticism.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But the connections between novels are stronger to me than my investment into the story.
Yeah. You know, I think it's interesting and kind of weird that most modern dystopians have this like class system, and like there are societies, and there have been plenty of societies in every culture that have had sort of stratification and what's the word? What do we call it? It's a caste system. And so, like, I don't find caste systems to be that weird. And I find this caste system to be more plausible than, say, the one about where the kids all hunt each other.
The Hunger Games?
Hunger Games, yeah. Well, and we'll get back to that in a point in a second. But then, like, we showed up at Hogwarts, and they literally have, like, houses, and I was like, oh, okay, right? But like there's just so much stuff in this book that is everywhere else, right? It has the Hunger Games thing, and then it was like, but what if we take Hunger Games and put Harry Potter in there, and then kept on going.
Oh, I haven't even picked any Harry Potter themes out.
Well, they just have houses at their Hogwarts.
Yeah, I mean, that's normal for a school, though.
I guess.
You've got an engineering magnet, you have the liberal arts magnet, you've got the arts kids, the bands kids, the theater kids.
If it was based on your major, that would make more sense to me, right? But it's like based on your personality type, and that is a specifically fictional concept.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with it. I was just like, oh, we skipped out on like the houses thing, and then we got it right there at the end. Yeah.
Oh, right. Gotcha. Yeah, so the colors, when they started mentioning all the colors, I was like, oh, well, this is from Plato's Republic. Like throwing it all the way back. You have the Philosopher King, and he gets the gold sash, and you have the artisan class, and they get the blue sash, and you got the pink people giving massages. What?
Yeah. Right.
Oh.
Yeah, as like just as a way to organize society, I think it's dumb, and I think that's why it ends up being a dystopia. Besides the fact that like people are lying and enslaving each other, like I just think it's a dumb way to do it. This is better than the way Hunger Games does it, because the way Hunger Games does it is just dumb. Because they
How does Hunger Games do it?
They have their like districts, right? And this is the mining district, and this is the fishing district,
right.
As if like there is nothing you could possibly mine in the fishing district. Like, you know what I mean? Like I think it's dumb. And
but if there's no caves where there's the fishes, I don't know.
You don't need caves to mine. And also in the mining place, there's probably fishes,
Probably
right?
fishes in there.
Anyway, my
Yeah,
point
I
is
don't
like
know.
I've always thought that like that was like a weird way to organize it by like literal geography.
Yeah.
And this makes a little more sense, at least. It's just a literal caste system,
Yeah.
right? Like you would find in India or something like that. And I can buy into that. And so I find that, and like Divergent kind of does this, where they have like a caste system that's like these are the lawyers and the judges, and these are the security
Oh.
people.
I've
I've only
never.
ever seen the movie. I've never.
Yeah, I don't know
It's
anything about
alright.
Divergent.
But it's and it's all about a girl who doesn't really fit into any of the colors, and so
Oh.
she's the chosen one or whatever. It's kind of similar to this,
Mm-hmm.
but what's refreshing about this one is it's about somebody from the bottom proving that they could be the top,
Mm-hmm.
because that's kind of my problem with these caste society dystopian things is like really like you're robbing yourself. What if somebody's blue and they'd
Mm-hmm.
make an excellent copper?
But he doesn't naturally make an excellent gold.
No, no, he doesn't.
He is a completely different person now. Someone said something about Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't remember. Um and I like, I get the beginning trying to like set the foundation for who he is originally with EO, what
Yeah,
that
yeah.
part of his world is. But it was just all so fast. It was like, we're a dancing people, we're an angry people, we're a mining people, we're a drunken people. I was like, okay.
Well, they try to make it sound like they're the ones who have fun and all that stuff, and then like you get to the rest of the world and like they're having a cool time too, except they're also like not mine slaves. Suck.
They don't have vipers burrowing in their
Yeah.
stomachs.
The whole dancing thing, the I'm still this song that they kill EO over is not that big a deal. Right? Like it's just like you could let people sing it and there will be no revolutions, right? Like in fact, that song is so bland. You should let them sing it because it's killing the people that sings it. That makes it a problem. Like
Right.
just don't do that part.
It had the words to it, didn't it?
Yeah, and it's about things about like gold falling down, but like who cares? Just let them sing it in their little minds and just it'll be fine, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
that big a deal.
And what's this forbidden dance that his dad got killed over?
It's gonna be the swishy sword fighting. That's
yeah,
what it is.
Swishy
Yeah.
sword fighting.
Before we even knew that those things existed, I was like, this makes sense, right? The reason you would ban it'd be like if kung fu was like
Yeah.
super OP, and so you banned kung fu, overpowered.
Oh, this reminds me of, was it like Daddy Daycare or whatever? When like, is it Daddy Daycare? He's really like a Secret Service guy, and he teaches his kids this funny dance, and really it's the dance that gets him through to like the safe or something like that. I don't
Yeah.
remember, but that's what that's gonna be.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is how I save the world and become the king.
So far, I'm sorry, we're kind of all over the place, but
Oh, Shelby likes Terraforming Mars. I love that game.
yeah, we love Terraforming
I don't even
Mars.
like it in a competitive way. I never want to win. I just want to achieve
You just want to make it green.
oxygen level, you know.
But before I go on to the point I was going to make, this
Sorry.
my biggest. I am enjoying this book. It is. One of our viewers told me that they like it as much as they liked Fourth Wing, but they like it for different reasons. I'm not sure I like it as much as Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing really, Fourth Wing gets you in there, and I was there. I could see everything. I could feel everything, and there's something about the writing of Fourth Wing that does it that Red Rising doesn't quite do for me. I'm enjoying the story. I enjoy the world. I think the writing is a different caliber, not significantly different, but different.
The narration style is very different too.
But so my point.
Pacifier, thank you.
Well, now I've forgotten. Yes, that's what it was. I forgot where I was trying to go. Oh, the only real beef that I have with this book so far, I'm cool with the color society and like doing your thing, whatever, right? Because like that's what's selling at this time.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got to set up a world. It has to have
Sure,
some kind of rules.
sure.
Just do that.
My beef is that Io and Darrow pop out of their mind to the surface of Mars and they don't get agoraphobia. That's my biggest beef. They like show up, there's a forest, they do their thing, and then they like go back. They've discovered they've been lied to, but also they have lived in something like this their whole lives, and then there's everything.
Well, he mentions like it makes him kind of sick to his stomach when he looks up at the stars.
Yeah, but I
It
think it
freaks
would
him
do a
out.
lot more than
Yeah,
that.
but he's a very strong and smart person.
I
He's an
don't think it,
exceptional
it is a
guy.
biological thing, right? It would be like waking up and you're in the ocean,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. And also, Io died right after that.
Yeah,
And who knows how many times she actually made it up to the
sure.
top.
I think that that part, that is the big reveal, right? That's the reveal where we are lied to. There's a world beyond this, and
Allegory of the Cave is what I thought of there.
yes, yes, it's all yes. There's a lot of that there, like literally. But they just that point is so downplayed,
Yeah.
and it's just
It's almost like it was
that's
a
crazy,
dream.
and then
Yeah.
they go back in. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was way too fast, and I wish we had spent a lot more time panicking.
Yeah.
And like being a little, if he says like, you know what, I'm sure there's a good reason I want to keep going, I'm on board. People would do that, right? But it's too fast.
Yeah, it was interesting. But I get that it's going fast because that is not the book. The book is him going to school and
Sure.
being a gold and overpowering and so and that this was just explaining how he gets to that point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, sure.
a thing that kind of pulled me out and made me think of Anthem, their names. Dancer, Harmony. Like in Anthem it's all like equality,
Right.
liberty,
Yeah.
you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Pretty gruesome, all the descriptions of his body going through all those changes.
Man, that was probably the best part of the book so far. Was just like
That was cool.
gym montage slash
Right.
right.
Running with panthers.
Yeah. The machine they have for him to like work out in is super cool.
Yeah.
I wish we had that.
You're like, I would do that.
I would absolutely do that.
But if you'd get so motion sick from the VR.
Yeah, probably so. but that's kind of the point, right? Like he runs in it and you move and you're it's cool. It reminds me a lot of the Three Body Game, but it's kind of a in the American show they just like make it work. In the Tencent show, it's like this whole setup and they have like a pad they run on to try to get around all that. But this is probably the most elegant version. I like it a lot.
Yeah. Are there noticeably different accents in the audiobook? Yeah. In the audiobook, Darrow and Io sound very, I don't know which way, Irish or Scottish. I know one is like much hard, like almost another language when you hear it in English. And then the golds are just British, you know, much more like not just British,
Like
posh.
proper.
Yeah,
Yeah, interesting.
yeah. British colonizer shocker, says Shelby.
Yeah.
Josh says, I thought the transformation was going to mess him up. They made the exercise sound like it was going to break him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and he died in the process of having his surgery. And Mickey? Is that the eccentric man that's making him beautiful and keeps calling him my boy and my
Yeah.
darling?
That part, I mean, like, if they make a movie of this, I really want to spend a lot of time there because that was weird and creepy, and I loved all of it.
Yeah, and very Hunger Games,
Yeah.
right? Like they doll her up and make her all flaming and crazy looking.
Yeah.
And
I like that they've included this part where, like, he doesn't understand his own strength, which comes to, like, this tragic end at the end of our reading where he, like, kills that boy.
well, he had to.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that was like the one guy he was, like, kind of cool with.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That was
part
really sad.
Yeah, it was sad.
He's got some issues.
Yeah.
And again, sorry, go.
That part reminds me of Fourth Wing again with like the like being kidnapped and then having to like break out and all that stuff with Varys or whatever his name was, you know, the guy who was like,
Yeah, I
you
don't
remember
his
that guy?
name,
Yeah.
We see this huge physical transformation within Darrow, but all he's worried about is would Io recognize
Right.
me anymore?
And she won't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she won't.
Yeah.
It's interesting, you know, because I'm really enjoying that's the one thing that I'm looking forward to most in this book is of all these dystopian color coded things, it's always somebody from the outside who brings it down. You know, Hunger Games is like that with like Katniss is from the mining, like again isn't she from the mining people? I think she's mining people. The bottom of the bottom, and from the outside she tears it down. You know, and they come to like love her for being a winner or whatever, but she's still an outsider. And this whole like infiltration concept I think is really interesting. And not just because he is not. You're right. Like he's not capable of bringing down this society as a red. He has to become what they are, with the hatred of being red, and with what he has learned and the hardness that he has gained. But he has to become them to be able to do it, and I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. I love the little golden snitch thing that Mateo made for Darrow, where when he speaks her name, it
Yeah.
opens up and he gets one little petal
Yeah,
from the flower.
I think it's cool.
That's nice. Wondered if Io was pregnant.
Yeah, I am not convinced that Io is dead.
Neither is Shelby.
I think it's highly likely that she is dead. I am not convinced because I think it would just be a really great twist for them to have used Darrow and done all this stuff, and eventually he runs into Io again, and she's like, "What have you become?" Even though she like
She
wanted
him
him
to do this.
Well, she doesn't know about this. I don't know if or for what if he runs into Io and she doesn't know, she doesn't recognize him, and how that would break him. But I think there's a lot of potential there for like a really good emotional moment. Yeah, I think it'd be great.
And we do see this kind of transformation in Fourth Wing as well, which is interesting. Stop the video if you haven't caught up to Fourth Wing with where we are in the book club. But with what's his name, Zayden. By the end of the second book,
Yeah.
he has become
Yeah.
something completely different that Violet doesn't know that she can stand by.
Shelby, this book, the series, I think it's like 7 or 9 books long. So like we're not really committed to doing all of it. Definitely not in one go. And I don't know that that's how long it takes for him to like get a fleet and nuke Mars or whatever he's gonna do. But I am looking forward to that. I do want to see it.
Yeah, I'm still like longing for a dystopian series as good as Arc of a Scythe.
Yeah. And see, like I'm interested in
it's
reading that, but you've read
good.
it already.
I've read 1 and 2, but I have not read 3.
Yeah, my favorite dystopian thing is a movie, and it's Equilibrium. Equilibrium is so good, and it's good because I might live in that world. Like it's dystopian enough, and it's bad. Like I'm not saying that like, oh, it's like almost okay. It's not good, but it's like the best dystopia that
I
can
would
think of.
totally live in the world of Scythe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
totally. It's
Maybe
not
we'll have to read
not
it.
perfect, but their issues I think are better than ours. I mean, there's a huge corruption thing, and that's kind of what the whole point of the thing is about. But
I think it's and I've never really thought about this whole like allegory of the cave thing in terms of dystopias, because I think the allegory of the cave, I don't know, I don't think it's necessarily meant to be about dystopias. Like it's like
no, the whole point is
it's a philosophical. It's supposed to be about
because Plato believes that there is the version of things that we see in this world, and then there is a perfect version of everything in the mind of the creator. And this is not real.
Right.
This is all
right. And so it's
shadow.
not inherently dystopian, but it is a great dystopian metaphor.
Right.
And it is tied into the Republic. And so like you do get these sort of like things, but the whole idea of so many these dystopias are underground and like coming forth to the light, and like there's just so much metaphor there that it's very interesting that we see that over and over again. And the reason I picked this book was because I enjoyed Silo so much, which is another below ground coming forth to discover the truth of the world. And like I wonder if we could come up with another metaphor that isn't like quite the same but like similar concept, but we've been doing this one for thousands of years.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a universal one. I like their beef between like Greek versions and Roman versions of things. And it seems like, and I might have just misunderstood this, but it seems like as Darrow is growing up, the Greek ideal was the true ideal and the Romans were the knockoffs. But now that he's above ground with the golds, they're all about the Roman versions of things instead of the Greek versions of things.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of funny.
The chat's talking about how generally they don't like this book right now.
Ah,
and I'm enjoying it, but I don't disagree that like this is not like top tier so far.
Shelby says it's competing with the Flanders panel.
I don't know. Flanders Panel has a special place in hell for me. If I were to make a tier list at the end of this year, it would not shock me. I want to see the rest of it. Right? We always have a rough first week.
We, again, our friend who has read this book has read a lot farther than we have. A lot farther than we have.
Mm-hmm.
And he loves it so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's really making me hold out hope that
Yeah.
that something really, that we are going through this rough patch to build the story,
Yeah.
and then we're about to we're going up the roller coaster, and we're about to be woo
Yeah.
all the way down.
For me, I don't know. I'm going to reserve judgment till the end of this book. It wouldn't shock me if we did a tier list at the end of the year and this was not close to the top because we've read some really good stuff. But what we've read that's good, I think, is really good writing. And it's definitely the writing in this book that's holding me back, not necessarily the story.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It just is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because I really enjoyed the last couple of chapters of our reading.
Yeah.
I was much more into it and much less distracted by everything else, all the literary analysis-y type things. I was really getting more into the story.
Yeah. I might like this more than Devil in Dark Water. That book just, it kept going.
It did keep going.
It should have not. Sometimes.
Not counting it out. But Peggy and Shelby have a ranking system going, and this book may not be great. I want y'all to share.
Fair enough.
I want y'all to share your ranking system. I want y'all to go live. Oh, we could go live together. That's the thing. I don't know how to do it.
We'll figure it out.
Okay. Hey, there's like more buttons on the side now. What does it mean?
It doesn't. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I'm interested in seeing, so if let's say there's 7 books in this series, it better do like, I understand that there's like an overarching story to Harry Potter, but it's kind of like a Monster of the Year sort of situation at the same time. And so like I guess you have to do that to make this interesting for 7 books. But if you don't do that, or so if you do that, I'm worried that you lose sight of, because for so many of the Harry Potter books, it just doesn't matter that much that like he is the chosen one, right? Like it is background, it is kind of why these things are happening, and it's why he can overcome these things, but it's really about like we're trying to figure out this thing this year, or this is the Goblet of Fire thing, and that's where you spend your time, and then it ties back in. Mm-hmm. But if we lose sight of Darrow like trying to overcome this society and we just do Monster of the Year, I think we really lose sight of like what the point is, because that is the point. Whereas Harry Potter is like literally just the point is, here's Harry Potter going to school. Oh, by the way, he's this like chosen person. It's a story about him and not about this overcoming of evil. But like this Darrow story, I don't think is about him. I think it's about overcoming evil, right? And so,
do we even know that Darrow is the main focus of all 7 books? It's just called Red Rising.
I suppose we don't know that.
So
true. Yeah, true.
Other Reds might be joining.
Yeah.
The next book is called Sons of Ares, and so
interesting.
I think that we'll see more of them.
Yeah.
And their background. Do we think that dancer is Ares? Aren't they kind of saying that maybe he is?
Yeah, they kind of hinted that. What if it's somebody else? I'm waiting for a big twist. What if it's Darrow's? Well, I guess they hung his dad, but like he lived, so maybe his dad lived. What if his dad is Ares? Or, what if Ares is really some gold and nobody's ever seen Ares and they are like using this to channel their frustration into a way that like can be managed or something.
Kind of like in 1984, like the bad guys are really just created by the government.
Yeah.
And that way it's still all under control.
Yeah, and it just makes you think you're doing something.
Yeah.
And they have a way to like find the people who are being rebellious and keep an eye on them. Yeah. I don't know.
Evie seems to be special. She was a pink, taking care of Darrow while he was healing.
Yeah.
And he asked Mickey to like kind of promote her and keep her safe and not use her the way that the rest of the pinks are used. And then at the end of the part that we're reading, Harmony has
like adopted her.
Yeah. And Evie also kissed Darrow on the forehead,
Mm-hmm.
like Io does in his dreams.
Hmm. Yep. Yep.
Mm.
So somebody in the chat was guessing, what if EO is Aries? That would be cool. That would be cool. If Aries just ends up being just like a person, that I've never met, I don't care, right? Like, okay, cool. But if they're even if it's just Dancer, they're just like, here's the reveal, it's Dancer. Be like, well, we knew, but okay, that's cool.
Every time we're reading or watching something now that there's like a person that we're waiting to figure out like who the person is,
Yeah.
in my mind, it's the we could play dodgeball guy that was in Our America, Not Their America. Sorry, I'm using too many references and not any real words. Okay, what was the name of the show? Our
Man in the
America.
High Castle.
Man in the High Castle. Okay, the man in the High Castle.
Oh yeah.
The guy from
Yeah.
King of the Hill.
Right.
He, in my mind, is the secret hidden person
I
behind
gotcha.
everything, which is about as disappointing as pulling the curtain behind a Wizard of Oz, and it's just some little derpy guy calling all the shots.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a whole thing. Uh, all right, so yeah, Josh is saying, "What if it's EO?" I'm kind of wondering too. Ooh.
So Peggy's asking some interesting questions, right? So like
Yeah.
there's this whole thing about the great lie and equality and how they try they democracy with a and tried to be equal, but like clearly we are not. That is really interesting and a touchy subject. Um, and I think what's important to recognize is that equality is something that exists only in the mind, right? Like it's here. It doesn't exist anywhere else. It's just here. And so if we decide everybody is equal, then they are. And if we decide that they are not, then they are not, right? Because otherwise, if it's based on biology alone, then like obviously, if it's biology alone, then people are not the same. Therefore, they are not equal. But we have to give to people something that makes them the same, right? And you could argue that maybe that's not worth it, and maybe we shouldn't treat everybody as equal. And most people throughout history have made that argument,
Mm-hmm.
and it is entirely possible. We live in a place and time where that is the thing that we are trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the Greek democracies, they did not believe that they were equal. That is
Mm-mm.
not a thing. Even in the American democracy,
Right.
up until very recently,
Very.
did we decide that that was going to be something we were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we could entirely find out in the next couple hundred years that that way of trying to do things does not work well. We could. That doesn't mean that you have to go enslave everybody and like do terrible things, right? But like we could, you know. Every democracy could fail. Like that could happen. Every society that believes that all people should be equal could fail. We might make a society where everyone literally is equal, right? Where they have like achieved this ideal, and it could still fail.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing about that guarantees any success. You know, in at least any longevity, right? Like you could succeed in attaining that, but
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, I did. Josh mentioned some Ender's Game training vibes.
I get a lot of Ender's Game out
Yeah.
of this.
Especially, they're indicating that, they've had their eye on him for a long time, and he's like solving all these puzzles really fast.
Yeah.
And Ender was really exceptional and gifted,
Right.
and created to, or kind of created to raise to become this person.
Yeah.
And it seems like even though Darrow doesn't know that,
Yeah.
that he's been kind of groomed for this situation.
Yeah.
Um, and the cover of the book said, there was Ender, there was Katniss, and now there's Darrow. So, like, whoever wrote that blurb on the front of the cover of the book is even making those
Right.
connections.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Sylvie says, I saw an example from another book about motivating people to fight for someone, not something.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we
That
read
was
that.
in
test
Yes, trusted the
trust,
NLC. Yeah,
and
yeah.
it worked with Darrow in The Big Lie.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, it worked with Darrow, but The Big Lie tries to motivate people around something.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And let's go back to Plato's Republic, just to bounce back onto Peggy's last point. Like, what if fighting for equality is why we are so good at fighting now? That's interesting too. Um, and in Plato's Republic, it's supposed to be this perfect society that's never existed, but
Right.
it is a stratified society where there is
Mm-hmm.
one person who is the king and is supposed to be the best, and then we all follow
Mm-hmm.
along. And if it worked as it did on paper, I guess I don't have a complaint. You know?
But there's no true art. There's no freedom of expression, nothing like that. All the poetry had to be very tame,
Mm-hmm.
no violent poems, no
In the
overly
Republic,
creative
yeah,
poems. And also, the philosopher king, so those who rule cannot have, balance out that
right,
power. You couldn't be king and be wealthy. You couldn't be king and have a family.
yeah,
You had to you had to have nothing
yeah.
so that you had nothing to gain.
Right. I think, unfortunately, I don't think that any perfect society is going to be capable in the current biological state.
Mm-hmm.
And if we were to augment that biological state to make the perfect society, I'm not sure that it's what we would want.
Right. No, it would
And
be discontent.
yeah. And what if we had a world without war? Well, what if there's one person who wants to take from everyone else? Well, now we have to go stop that person, and then you have war, right?
Well, and that's in the
Yeah.
Republic. He gets kicked out.
Yeah.
If you don't follow the rules, you're out.
But then you have this world of people beyond your
Uh
borders,
huh.
right?
Just
Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't work
Do you
right.
remember what his Republic was called? What the place was called?
No.
Called Utopia.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
know what Utopia
Right.
means?
Yeah, nowhere.
Yeah.
But
Perfect
that's
place and
yeah.
nowhere.
I think you know I think that states and governments evolved not necessarily to control people, but because I think that I think that exploitative outside organizations have it first, right? Like a raider culture or something. We're going to take the sheep people's stuff and bring it back to us. And then you end up with an organization that is defensive in nature to fight against that. And then eventually you decide, well, let's take the fight to them. But because your state now, as the sheep people, is greater than the raider people's state, it's a technology, right?
Hmm.
States and governments are the first technology on the path to war, with like nukes being the end. And I think that we don't think about that. But it's as defensive a technology as a shield or a sword
Hmm.
or whatever else. And it's a way of organizing ourselves for the general defense or offense, whichever way you want to see it. And I think for that reason, as long as somebody wants what somebody else has, we are always going to end up with this. And I think that equality for everyone is a great ideal, and acting as if it is true is important, even if it is not. At the same time, like there's some people I don't really want voting, right? Like I don't know, what to do about that. So,
Oh,
and maybe I'm one of them, but I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know. My thing crashed.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. I think it's interesting that the Sons of Ares do not see themselves as a terrorist organization.
Yeah.
Yet Harmony busted up into Mickey's office with a bomb strapped to her.
Yeah, yeah. I
Seemed terroristy to me.
one of my favorite things in terms of resistance is, are you a terrorist or a freedom fighter?
And
Because y'all are the same thing,
right.
right? Like I don't know, because one of my favorite things to say about Star Wars is that I think that the rebels are terrorists. I love saying that to people, and I just want to see how they react.
Mm-hmm.
But
But
like,
it's just which side are you on?
yeah,
That dictates what you call them.
yeah,
It's all about perspective.
yeah. And like, I'm not saying that the Empire's good people. I am not saying that. But what are they?
Also, they're golds. They're British.
Fair, fair. So, I don't know.
It did blow my mind when Darrow made it up to where the golds were like flying through the air with their wings. That tripped me out for a minute. I was like, "Are we imagining this?
No,
Or
they're
is
like
they're literally
like literal angels.
flying
Yeah,
through the
yeah,
air?"
yeah. If y'all have not watched
Wild.
The New Giver, I definitely recommend doing that. It's not that new, but it's the newest version. And then if you have not watched Equilibrium, I would definitely suggest that one as well because it has a lot of like Giver vibes to it, I suppose.
This does?
Equilibrium.
Oh, Equilibrium does. Gotcha. Yeah, they're making lots of Giver references in the chat.
Yeah. You know, and I've quoted this before in some other book, but I read somewhere once, we live in someone else's dystopia, you know, and like, how do you know? How do you know that you don't live in that dystopia? And how do you know, like, I think about like the Soviet Union or whatever, and like those people were trying to do something good, right? They wanted a world that was supposed to be equal. They wanted to bring their people out of poverty. I get it. I'm on board. And then it goes real south. And so, like, how do you know? And so let's flip it on its head, right? Here we are saying we want everyone to be equal in our society, and we're gonna fight for that. And then, like Peggy says, and like, what if it goes south? Like, I don't know. And like, you can't blame somebody for having these great ideals. You can blame somebody for doing wrong to other people, right? You know what that is. Don't do
Right.
that part.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. Shelby said, yeah, that idea worked, Jason.
I mean, it didn't work.
Yeah. So, okay. So where we left off at the end of part 2. We've got a part 3 and a part 4 that we need to read through to
Yep.
finish out this book. So far, we've seen like the origin story. We've seen, you know, who he was, how he was raised, what his innards are made of, you know. He is a bit superhuman already because of the Viper situation and the strength of his heart. Now he is literally superhuman, made Frankenstein style into a gold. And we see him kill somebody so that he can move forward to become a gold and infiltrate. Do we know what the full mission is that he has? Like,
No, we don't. They want to just make him a sleeper agent, right? Like he's going to get a fleet or something, and then they will give him his orders. But like, it doesn't make sense to make a plan yet because they don't know how far you can go.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are we anticipating for the rest of this book?
But for the rest of this book, I have no idea. I don't know how far we're gonna get.
I was listening to the theatrical version of the audiobook from the library at first until Ia's death. And I had to find a stopping point shortly thereafter and shut it off. That girl strangled to death for 5 minutes
Ugh.
at 2.0 speed. I mean, it just went on and on and on. And I was like in the middle of folding laundry or something, so I couldn't stop. I was like, good gravy. The one thing that was cool in the theatrical version, though, was like when it was describing how the little TV systems were repeating parts of her song and parts of her little speech and stuff like that. Not speech, but like the words she shouted out. That sounded really cool. But man, just hearing. And then when she finally died, it went. I was like, I'm done. I'm just gonna listen to the regular audiobook now. And also, when you listen to it sped up, there's music going on too, but the music's like sounds like a bad VHS tape.
Yeah.
So, just so you know. But there are different voices and different characters and like lots of people, and it makes it very immersive. So.
Peggy's saying, "What if he apologizes to Cassius's family and they like bring him in?" I also think that might happen because he's like a belladonna or whatever, and they're like the powerful family. I definitely think it's possible that he could become their patron in like a weird twist because he got rid of their weak son. I think that's why, you know, he was wondering why are these people on the bus going to school with me when their scores are so low, and it's because if they had like not let them in, they would have no pretext to kill them. But they allow in the lowest scorers on purpose so they can kill them on day one
Dang.
so that they can like purify the gene pool or whatever, right? It's weird that like we all agree that the golds aren't good, but then this book is like, hey, maybe the great lie, right? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. That's a good point. And that's very fourth wing.
Yeah.
Just let them get cooled off.
Yeah. Sure.
Let the dragons just kill them off, even if they made it that far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm ready for the next fourth wing, though. I'm going to have to reread the first two. I don't even remember anymore what happened. Some of these other books that we are referencing, by the way, if you haven't read, are really worth a read. I love Fahrenheit 451, but some people tend to prefer Fahrenheit 451 or Anthem.
Mm-hmm.
People don't typically like both, you know. But I love Ray Bradbury, and Fahrenheit 451 is really good. And then also, if you've never read 1984, you know, the godfather of all dystopian texts, you should read it. It's really good. It is very long though. It's kind of a grind to get through it. And then so, you know, what's it said? Darrow had to read tons of stuff. Like they really like killed that boy through literacy. That boy had to read the Iliad, like the Odyssey. He had to read Machiavelli's The Prince. He had to read.
That's my favorite part of like this whole Frankenstein thing they're doing is they're like cutting him open and putting like iron rods in his body or like whatever they're doing, right? They're doing all this stuff and then they wake him up and they're like, "You're gonna do this," and he's like, "Oh, I can't read."
Yeah. You got to be able to read to be a gold. So he goes straight from Hooked on Phonics to reading the Odyssey. Go figure. If you've not read the Odyssey is very good. And there are versions of it that are not torture to read, that the translations are really nice.
So Peggy just mentioned one of my favorite dystopian novels, which is We by Zamyatin. It's it's like a Soviet dystopia. And it's really good. It's definitely worth reading.
I've never read that one.
So and it's actually, oh God, I can't remember exactly when it's written, but it's also like a fairly old dystopian novel.
Yeah. And if you've never read Machiavelli's The Prince, it's short. It's kind of a grind because it's kind of weird, but it is very interesting. Because you know it may or may not be satire, but there are these really great nuggets of wisdom like planted within.
Yeah.
And he'll need to use some of that to make it to the top.
Yeah. You know, in thinking about the Golds and like this society they've built for themselves or whatever, there's this thing that happens with all people in power where they think that what is good for me must be good for the people because I'm good for the people. And, you know, we can all agree that like what the Golds are doing is like not a good thing, right? And even though like a lot of society has a good place, keeping people down and not allowing them to achieve their full potential is a concern for me. Enslaving people is a concern for me. I think it's morally and economically a bad idea. But they see this as the best thing to do because it keeps them in power. And them being in power is what is good, you know? And, you know, we have no indication at all that this is a society that has a war. You know, ever since the Luna War or whatever, when they broke away from Earth, you know, things are peaceful except for all the mind slaves and you know, right, like it's just changed a little bit, but they definitely, you know, the ability for us to think I'm doing what is good. I don't know, this really hits home to me, and I think maybe this is why I'm more interested in this book than everybody else, even though I agree with like it's not the best written book so that we've read so far. Is I do find myself in a position of power where I can do whatever I want a lot. And I have to constantly be on, or I have to like recognize that and say like, and I often if I dislike someone or if I think that someone should be dealt with harshly, I will be the person that defends them because like I have to play my own, like I recognize
your
that.
own devil's advocate. Yeah.
But like it can go sideways so fast and I absolutely see how it does, you know? And I think I'm doing the right thing, and then like history may judge me differently, or I may judge me differently, or like how what does that even mean? You know?
Yeah. Yep. But most people in power like this don't stop and think about that.
Yeah.
It's just go, go, go.
Yeah.
And then you're just desperate to keep yourself on top.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Let's see.
Yeah. See what I have highlighted. think all I really highlighted was like connections I was making to other things I read. I did notice that my book had a lot of like other people highlighted this. You know, like it'll show you when lots and lots of people have highlighted the same thing, and you know they were just like kind of little philosophical things or whatever. But there were a few of those. I was like, oh. I'm sorry. I thought I could find it quickly, and I cannot. And I got distracted. Shelby said she read another Colleen Hoover book. It's very good, and being turned into a movie. Dense Humanity. Yeah, it might have been Peggy. Might have been.
I mean, Peggy, I don't know what you mean by the we're doing a tiny bit of the power thing. Do you mean like Nicole and I on the show? I don't know what that. I don't understand, but I'm interested in understanding. Anyway.
Y'all are kind of doing a tiny bit of the power thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, tell us. Atlas is a character in Colleen's book. It ends with us.
Yeah, that's our dog's name. Yeah.
Tis.
She tried to join the show today, but she has a snitch toy now, and she just wanted to play with the snitch toy. So.
Yeah, it was going to be loud. Oh.
Help me understand.
So we used, a couple of times we like drew a book out of the hat, yeah. And now we're just like, we're reading this one.
Right. Because what I want to read must be good for the group, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, Peggy messaged me. She's like, can we bring the hat back? Yeah. and Peggy also gave us a list of, so, we do primarily fiction.
Yeah.
Well, we do only fiction.
Right.
But there are some nonfiction books that will work well for a book club.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to start integrating a nonfiction in every once in a while?
Like about what?
Well, I don't have my list in front of me, but like
we'll talk about it.
Devil in the White City is one of them.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm open to it.
I mean, there are some good ones.
Yeah. I mostly read nonfiction. So.
Right, and so like the book club is a chance for you to actually read fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I usually have a nonfiction going on the side, something. We think we're doing well. We think we do good for others. It's not bad, but we make decisions based on our own circumstances. Starvation Heights is another one that Peggy had mentioned.
One other, this is not really dystopian, but I really enjoy The Watchmen, which is sort of like a inverted superhero sort of situation, and it's about the superheroes, but like they get involved in like the Vietnam War.
Oh,
and
wow.
they're it's a movie. I'm sure you've seen the movie with me. We can watch it sometime, but it's all and there's a lot going on, and the people get tired of these like vigilantes because there's collateral damage and things like that. But it's sort of again this idea of I'm doing what I think is right, but everybody else doesn't want it. So I guess I have to stop, or like, is it right? Or what does that even mean? And it just kind of plays around with some of the values that go into that sort of hero thing, because these golds are superheroes, right? Like that's what this is,
Right.
And they have saved everyone from a world of war and give them all stable jobs and purpose and blah blah blah, whatever,
And I would be so mad though, once I found out. I've been working these mines, and that's fine. That's my livelihood. That's what I do. But I'm trying to win this stupid reward for being the best miner.
Right.
Your default giving it to Gamma every time.
Yeah.
And it's so I can have like a drop of honey on my biscuit.
And
it's not even like anything great. So I can have a different flavor beer.
Yeah.
And then I come out to the surface and you guys are flying.
Yeah.
And I can't have honey for my bread.
Yeah.
You can put rubies in your eyeballs. And I can't have a little bit of strawberry beer.
Yeah.
And I get vipers in my stomach. That's what I'd be mad about. I wouldn't be so mad about the fact that, like, oh, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Mars is already livable?
Yeah. Yeah.
All the planets are lived on?
Yeah, so one other thing that's kind of interesting, Peggy saying like
Not the
I
spice.
wouldn't be that mad about it if they weren't like starving the miners, and like I agree, they treat the miners poorly, and it appears to be for no reason.
For no
Yeah,
reason.
and so like that's sort of like why this is. If the Golds all want to like voluntarily go to school where they kill each other, I don't care.
Yeah.
But
Whatever.
starving your miners for no reason seems weird to me.
Mm-hmm.
But so then here's another point, right? I'm saying that like I want everybody to be able to achieve the greatest thing they could possibly achieve or whatever, but like it's entirely possible that our greatest genius is living in the tundra of Russia somewhere feeding yaks and has never been to school, and so we will never know it.
Mm-hmm.
And that person is going to run his father's yak farm, and his son is going to run his father's yak farm because that's what is available to them. And for most of human history, even just the concept that like we should be able to achieve and that should be available to us is a really new idea
Yeah.
and is not what human existence has been about ever until now. And most of it was just like, hey, can we make it through the winter, please? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you might have been a yak farmer and then been like, you know what, but in town there's a guy who makes shoes. I would really like to go make shoes. And that's what you achieved, right? You could go be the shoemaker.
You got
now.
out of there.
And but did you really?
Yeah.
And so, what does that even really, mean? And is, I don't know, I think of this like Maslow's hierarchy idea where the top is achievement, of self and becoming the best version of you. But that's such an incredible luxury.
Yeah.
That no one is really entitled to and is not a right. And if we were to think of it as a right, then who runs the farms and who does the muck jobs? Like what does that even look like? Yeah.
Well, yeah. Sorry, I had a lot of thoughts on it, but none of them need to be said out loud.
We'll talk about it later.
Well, no,
Yeah.
I mean, but that's just such a tough concept. Like that development of self and like what does that mean? And like we can look at other people and see like, wow, you are brilliant and you're selling yourself short and you could be doing so much more than you want to be doing. But they're exactly where they want to be, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's almost like Tress was talking about, like people are all like, gosh, you sell your body or you wear your body out for your work. She's like, well, you wear your brain out for your work.
Right.
I'd rather do this and
Right.
keep my brain to myself.
Yeah. Or so like I have this idea that there is a difference between potential freedom and actual freedom. And so, for example, because we have built roads everywhere, your actual freedom to drive from one side of the country to the other is significantly higher. But you have to drive on the roads. If we said you can drive wherever you want, you don't have to drive on the roads. Your potential freedom is higher. You can drive wherever you want. However, your actual ability to go from one side of the country to the other is very low, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a society like what happens when we have a society where everybody could go be whatever they wanted theoretically, right? And so your the cap on actual freedom on potential freedom is incredibly high. You can be anything, right? That's what we have.
Mm-hmm.
We have this society where your potential freedom is high. But we struggle to pay our bills, and people have two jobs and can't take care of their kids, and and so in our society, our actual freedom, I mean, like let's not joke, it's not low, but it's not
Right.
nearly as high as what the potential freedom is.
Right.
And so in this society, in this Martian society, we have a society where the potential freedom is incredibly low. And I don't know where the actual freedom stands on this, but what if it's higher, right? I don't know, right? But we can imagine a world, I suppose, that's like that.
Well, and in the book, someone even mentioned that freedom is slavery, and that is straight out of 1984, as Peggy points out. There's the freedom of slavery, war is peace, and what's the third one? Freedom of slavery, war is peace. I don't remember the third one, but there were three.
In 1984, the one where they're like locked in perpetual war.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's just so like we have a place to send our money basically is to making bombs. And, yeah.
East Asia is always at war with Eurasia, and
Right.
there's always like an ally, and there's always a war, and And there's always production
Right.
news and, all that. And everything is government branded. You have your government branded cigarettes and your government branded razor blades, and it all sucks. You have to go to the black market to get the good stuff.
Yeah.
And it's those people who live outside of the ring of government, like the miners, that are happy, that sing and dance and have families.
One interesting thing about We by Zamyatin is it kind of explores sort of like sexual freedom in a dystopia and like what does that look like, and it is very different from what any other dystopia has been willing to tackle, I think, in that realm.
1984 also addresses that.
Yeah.
With Julia. And she's like a member of the Junior Anti-Sex League, which made me think of Evie. Also, Evie, there was some mention of her having a ribbon around her wings or whatever, and Julia in 1984 had a ribbon tied around her waist. Yeah, the people who are able to buy things are slaves to things. Saturday Night Live just did a parody about Shein and Temu. Materialistic values make us monsters.
Yeah. There was some other book that we've read recently that talked about that.
Yes.
What was it?
I don't know.
Was it the Heaven and Earth grocery store? It might have been. But
it talked about
No. It was Devil in the Dark Water. It was, because it was talking about how, it doesn't matter if there's really a demon, these people are still enslaved to their possessions.
And the shipping company itself fuels our materialistic wants.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that was not that long ago.
Yeah. The more you have, the more you have to take care of it and spend your time doing. And
the more you want, you're not satisfied.
Yeah. Well, look, we've gone for almost an hour. Despite the fact that most people don't like this book, this has been our longest episode ever already.
Well, but that happens a lot of times when we're picking apart these pieces and trying to sort it all out. We end up with lots to talk about.
Yeah.
And this book does have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
We'll see what part 3 holds for us. So that's what part we're reading.
Yep, for next week.
And we'll see you Sunday.
Yep.
At 10 a.m.
Yep.
To talk about part 3.
And then we'll go ahead and announce our next book next week as well.
I'll draw from the hat.
You'll draw from the hat?
I'm going to draw from the hat.
Ooh,
and
y'all done it.
So, depending on if we end up liking this by the end of it, the hat might include Sons of Aries.
I don't anticipate us liking this by the end.
Really?
I really don't.
Gosh.
I am enjoying it, but like I said before, I've enjoyed most everything. And I'm easy to please, and
there's only one book I haven't liked.
Yeah, I wanted to read this, so like I'm gonna keep wanting to read it till I finish. But I don't anticipate us.
The reviews are so good.
They really are good.
So
what's going on here?
We're just in the beginning, and sometimes the beginning is really hard to get through because there's just a lot to learn about the world.
Yeah.
I think beginnings of dystopian books are almost always pretty cruddy.
Right.
When I was a teacher,
Yeah.
it was torture to get us through the first half of the book, and then by the second half, the kids were like, "Yeah, let's go!" I mean, they loved it, and I'm like, "Do you remember? You were like hating me."
Yeah, I think I
weeks ago.
struggled at the beginning of Fourth Wing. I think
You
I was
did.
like, I don't know.
You were like,
man.
"Why is it written like this? Why?" Like, the
because
part of where she was on the like bridge.
I really hated that part. I really hated that
because she
part.
was going through the history, and you're just like,
and I thought it was
"Ooh."
inelegant, and it is. But that's
But you got to get it out somehow.
Yeah, you got to get it out somehow. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to enjoy it, and maybe even if we don't read this, it's probably something that like I'll read the second one of just to see what happens. All right, one more thing. Something I loved out of The Giver, right? While I'm thinking about it, is when they say to each other, precision of language, right? Like, I'll still say that sometimes.
He says it to me all the time because I exaggerate and I don't use my words right.
Precision of language.
I'm like, oh yeah.
Yes. So no one hates this book.
Well, they might.
Precision of language.
They might hate it.
I dislike the writing style.
Who are you? To say?
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, we will see you guys next week for part 3, and we will pick the next book.
Forgot about Rosewater.
Oh, I did like Rosewater. I did. I liked it. I think I was probably the only one.
I will never unsee
The Floater.
Yeah.
I did like Rosewater. I do want to read the second one.
I do think about it a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't love it, but it was important for me to read it.
It was so different from most everything I've ever read. I loved like the Africa vibe. I loved like the way that it was like tackling poverty in the same place as this technology and like all this stuff going on. And
Yeah.
I loved like the cyberpunk feel. I liked all that. So.
Yeah,
Was it the best book we've read yet? No.
We've read so much cool stuff.
Yeah,
in the
we've read a
book
lot of
club.
good stuff.
What the heck?
Yeah.
It's stuff I'd never pick out myself.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's get out of here.
You did this, Becky. All right.
All right, cool. We'll see you
guys. Happy reading.
Bye. Thanks, Josh. See ya.